All right. Hello. My name is Autumn Brown, and I am here with artist Kalup Linzy on March 27th, 2023. We are recording in his studio at the Tulsa Artist Fellowship as part of the North Tulsa Artist Activism Oral History Project. So, Caleb, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you.
Let's just start with what were you like as a kid? How did you come into art?
As a kid, um, I was very creative, artistically inclined. Some of my first memories as a kid in terms of being artistic is when I would go stay with my father. And the same thing happened at my grandmother's house. I would always be out on the front porch singing, and I remember um, my father would sometimes go out for a couple of hours at night, or sometimes he used to work in the fields, and so he would have a babysitter with me, like the neighbor across the street, and I would get kind of sad or depressed. He was like, "Well, just go out on the front porch and sing like you normally do." So then I just go out on the front porch and just start like singing songs. Sometimes singing to the radio, just like from the top of my lungs. Me and my cousins, we would play church, and then a lot of times I would be the pianist and the choir director and whatnot. And sometimes we would sing along to like the gospel recordings, but sometimes we would just sing a cappella. But we didn't have a keyboard. I didn't know how to play the keyboard at the time, the piano, and so I would just like play with play pretend, and then they'd just be singing, and So instead of playing the piano, I'm actually making a tapping beat, and we would just sing and have a good time. But we were also in the real choir, so we was just kind of carrying over from choir practice sometimes before we actually sang on Sundays. And I think it was so many of us, and we were so young. My older cousin, who directed most of the choirs, the musical director at our church, she started the Mount Olive Jubilees because we weren't old enough to be with the teenagers yet, and we definitely weren't adults. And so they started a new choir called the Jubilees, and then we eventually graduated to the young adult choir. And I, you know, remember just having this urge to want to like write plays and skits and that sort of thing. And so by the time I got in my adolescence is when it kind of really started to, I don't want to say take shape, but really something started to happen when I was in adolescence. Because one thing, I remember my cousins, they had video cameras. Two of my cousins had video cameras. And so I would always use their video cameras, sometimes just to film, sometimes we would film skits together. But for me, it just turned into like a more serious thing. So by the time I got in high school, I sort of had fell for soap operas. My grandmother was watching soap operas. Her mother was watching, well, not even watching soap operas, listening to soap operas on the radio, like God and Light, like in 1937, And so then my grandmother, and family members watched them. And so I just caught on to them by the time I was in junior high school. And so I started making little soap operas with my cousins with the video cameras. And when I got in high school, I told, I asked actually my teachers, I was like, well, instead of doing a normal science project, can I make a soap opera my video? Or instead of doing the English paper, can I interpret, adapt this short story? And so that was my first, what in my mind was serious videos towards filmmaking. I did not take any, TV production classes, but because I ended up being student body president. I was president elect in my 11th grade year, and then I was president in my senior year. That the media teacher taught me how to use the machines, and they just basically left me at the school after hours and let me edit. And they would I would have to leave the door cracked, and then I would just hang out after hours. Even when I went away for college, they would still let me come back and use the editing equipment because they trusted me just like that, and believed in me at the same time. And so that's kind of where I started making my videos. In the singing part, I just grew up singing in the church choir. I was in chorus, so I had the gospel choir training, and I had the formal training. When I was in high school, my aunt, she brought me a keyboard, and she put me in piano lessons. But the thing was, because I knew how to play, it was hard for me to slow down and do the note thing. And I remember just like um, one practice, they just, they'll showcase our skill. I was like, well, I play by ear, and so I just played for everybody. And I think that was my last lesson, because it was like, I couldn't, and although like, I can't catch everybody by ear, but I think that was just meant for me to know enough so I can compose songs, because I can look at some music and like kind of know to sing a scale. You know what I mean? Like if you give me the main note, then I know you go up and do. And I also know how to read chords on sheet music, and then get the my sheet chart, my chord chart, and then compose. Because sometimes I will look at old songs and look at their chord progressions, and then create something similar to that just by what I see on the sheet music. And so so that was like, childhood, and I was a sensitive child. I kind of, I was one of those kids that could go either way. Like I can be like really good and sweet, or I can just be mischievous and like a troublemaker. But honestly, I got in trouble. Like, I think in like sixth grade, I had like 21 referrals or something like that. But I never got suspended for school, because I was always that kid that knew how to walk right up to the line, but never like really crossed it, kind of ease back, but do just enough to get the teachers riled up, and then I was just sort of stop. And even I remember in high school, my aunt, so I remember I had a cousin who was my eighth grade teacher. So I think eighth grade was probably the year that I wasn't bad, because my cousin was, my eighth grade history teacher. And so, like, I know she wasn't having it, because she got me together when I was in sixth grade. You know what I mean? And so, and I was shocked, 'cause I had never saw that side of her. And so then I kind of calmed down. In seventh grade, I still would, do some stuff. In eighth grade, I was like totally good. But ninth grade, it kicked back in. And then I'll never forget, I was sitting in the office, and they was trying to call my aunt. And I just kept giving them I gave them the wrong number, and I would not budge, because I knew if they got in touch with her, like, it was just over. And they just finally let me go, because I just refused. Like it was a standoff. And like that day I won, because my aunt was like, "We're gonna see you live with your Uncle Rock," and he was a preacher, and like he just did not play the radio. And so by the time I got in 10th grade, I changed. But I just was like, because it was like I was just tired of going home, like waiting to see what my punishment was going to be. And so like I never got expelled for school or ended up in juvenile or, jail, but I really walked that line. And so but then I don't know, like things changed. I got in, I was just running track and kind of being mischievous, my first part of high school. But then I don't know, I got involved in clubs, and, because I can perform and act. And I took theater classes as well. I was in the Sound of Music, as I think it's Uncle Dightweiler, the uncle of in the play. And it was a musical. And I don't know, I don't think I auditioned for The King and I. They did The King and I like later, but I don't know if I auditioned for that. That was in high school. So I just ended up doing the Sound of Music. And I don't know, then I did James Brown impersonations, and I think when I was in college, I started doing Tina Turner impression. I think that is when I started doing drag, incorporating drag into my work. But I was sort of doing like tower drags, like, mimicking Whitney Houston and Toni Braxton and Erykah Badu, like for my cousins at parties when I was in college. And so, but in high school, like some kind of way, I turned things around. It was like a moment when me and my cousin ran for Spring King and Spring Queen. And we had to raise money to win. It was a fundraiser. And we was like best friends, like cousins. Like we grew up. She was like a sister. Like her mother was like another mother to me, and a few other of us. And so we was like really close. And so we we raised money, but we didn't know who won. Whatever. But we won. So it was like, and so that was like the moment. And then that same semester, it was like my final semester, and I made the honor roll, and that had happened. And so it was just something just shifted the end of my sophomore year. And I think that was I think, I don't know if we got in trouble for drinking in 10th grade or 11th grade. We might have been in 10th. So I think in 10th grade, I might have gotten in trouble twice in 10th grade for not going to a track meet. My aunt, I was trying to skip the track meet, but the bus came by my house, and then my aunt got so upset that I was trying to skip a track meet. And she got on my case, and don't you ever, if you don't ever sign up for nothing, if you ain't gonna commit to it, you commit to it and you do your best and you go all the way through with it. But don't be telling people you're gonna do something and then don't do it. And then that was a moment when I really start keeping my word. You know what I mean? Like, so if I say if I don't go somewhere, I say, well, I might not be able to come, but I'll try. Then I might not. But if I tell you I'm gonna be somewhere, then like I'm gonna do it. I don't think I hardly ever counsel on people. Like it had to be something like really dramatic, but like I'd never like tell people I'm gonna do something and don't do my best to follow through with it.
So that was a really defining moment.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb,
Yeah.
Where were you born, raised? Talk to me about the community that you were.
So I was born in Stuckey. So I was mainly talking about Stuckey. So I was born in Stuckey, Florida, a small, close-knit rural town in central Florida, Lake County. Dirt roads. We didn't get paved roads until, I remember when we got a paved road. Gosh, my grandmother was like, she was the sweetest lady to her grandkids. My aunts, they would tell you different. And my mother would. But I just know we had like dirt roads, you know what I mean? And like for the early part of my childhood, but we had like the church. One of my cousins opened like a disco in the 70s. And so, they had like the disco, and then they had like, shops where you could buy candy, but the grown people hung out and drank and stuff. So it was very, I just feel like it's why I love the color purple so much, because it was very like that rural culture where you had the church, you had the juke joint, you had the ones that you going to hell, the really saved folks, and then you had the ones that didn't care, and was just party. But then you had the people that grew up in the church, party, but returned to the church, at a certain age. You had a lot of people move away, and they would come back every year for the annual homecoming. Like family reunions. I remember the first family reunion, with my father's side in Center Hill. So my father lived like, maybe it was like 5 miles. It was some minutes, to the next town. And I just remember just being outside with all my, relatives, and they, cooking like goat. You know what I mean? Like, my father at a young age taught me how to wring a chicken's neck, you know what I mean? Like, because he raised chickens, and so I know how to wring the neck and then put it on thing and chop it, So, gosh, that was like a young age. When I was young, my grandmother had like chicken and roosters and, rabbits and bunnies. And so it was, but then things sort of changed. Why? I don't know if the city made them get rid of that stuff, or my grandma just got old and she just didn't want to manage that sort of thing. But it was very like roosters, chickens, you see them lay the eggs, you know what I mean? I think one of my relatives had a goat one time. I think my uncle had a goat that was in the yard. And it was just like, yeah, I don't know. It was like, so it was good. So my mother didn't raise me because my mother was mentally ill. So my mother was like a straight A student, and then she ended up dropping out her senior year. But then, like drugs triggered, like the illness or whatnot. And so she didn't raise me, but she was in and out. So a lot of part of that could be traumatic, you know what I mean? Because, she would get into fights and stuff. And, like a person that has schizophrenia, like, like once you start an argument with them, like you can't give them energy, because if you do, then it's just going to escalate. So not everybody knows that, so they give energy, and then it just turns into a whole thing. So it was moments like that throughout the childhood, but I have to say, like, other relatives were there. Like, I remember like just being in my aunt's kitchen, and I would imitate them, and they was in my aunt Gwen. She used to cook chicken out of her kitchen and sell it, and then her husband. This was in Webster, so this was maybe like 10 minutes from Stuckey. Um, Maybe 15, but it just depending on which way you went. And so she would cook chicken. Her husband had like a shop and stuff, but then they had like a gambling room where we wasn't supposed to even go look. But of course, we used to go peek in the hole because they told us not to. yeah. And so it used to be like, and I would go over there with my grandmother sometimes. I remember when I got in adolescence, like my cousins used to go out over there, so I would just go and hang out at my aunt's house, because I used to love the strawberry cake that she had. And I would just go hang out there. Sometimes when my grandmother would stay the night, when my grandmother needed to get, away from our house. But I just remember as a kid, like, because I used to imitate them, and she'd be like, "Caleb, how I do?" And so I would mark how she walked, and how she acted. And she's like, "How Diane do?" And I would mark how my auntie Diane do. Like, how Mommy do it? You know what I mean? I would just like imitate them. They would kind of get they would be laughing about it. So I feel like that was some of the first times I was sort of where that seat of performance was there, where I can just like look at people, and sometimes I can imitate a lot of people in my family voices because the cadence is similar. And so but I just remember like it being like looking back, it was just a cultural place, and a lot of those places aren't even there anymore. Like they tear down a lot of the places. So like I think where I'm from, like we haven't done a good job, preserving historical landmarks, or what I feel are historical landmarks. And so that was kind of like, Stuckey, Center Hill, and Webster, where the kind of places I floated around in as a kid. So going back farther, Stuckey was founded in 1898, and that stuff is in here somewhere. Because my cousin, I wasn't like a family official historian, but in the 90s, not my cousin, I guess she was like a cousin, but she was a friend, a childhood friend. We co-founded a community festival in Stuckey to celebrate its 100th year.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
The little pamphlet thing, the little book thing that we made is in here somewhere. It's not too far. And I don't know why I didn't pull it out when I knew the nature of the project that we were doing today. Can I get up, or should I? Okay. So I don't want to mess up the camera angle.
Oh no, because this is a perfect opportunity for me to. You found it?
Yeah.
Oh.
So I think a page missing, but that was like our little book that we call it. We call ourselves. Well, we didn't call ourselves. I was in college, and.
Wow.
And it was like Stuckey turning 100. So we started a festival, and then we just got pictures from like different people. And so this has a whole history of Stuckey. And
that's pretty cool that you guys came up with that.
Yeah. So it's a history of Stuckey, like the first families in Stuckey. So this is my great grandmother right here, the one that actually watched soap operas on the radio, listened to soap operas on the radio. And some of my grandmother's sister's siblings. Stuckey actually had a school, had its own school. And then we did like a flashback of each decade. So we got, we got pictures from each decade. And so you may know about this. So the 40s is when Stuckey, they would call it the racial attack. So you ever heard of the Groveland Four? So it's where, I think this white woman said she was beat up by some black men. And so, actually the church turned 50 that year, that decade. And so basically they ended up killing like three of the boys, but they came through Stuckey and shot up. But Groveland, Florida was a target, but Stuckey was another small black town. And so Thurgood Marshall had to come down and like represent. So you can Google the Groveland Four.
Wow.
And so this is my uncle, my great uncle, my grandmother's brother retelling that, because I think the chef died.
Yeah.
And so like people start remembering his the history. So what my uncle didn't say in here, but if you go online on YouTube and watch his video, like my great grandmother, who you saw earlier, she was also alive when they did the Ocoee massacre.
I think I've heard of that.
Yeah. And so, but I didn't realize during the Ocoee massacre, my great grandmother helped that guy, help him escape to, I think, either the Tampa or like New York. Yeah. But if you go, my uncle he was telling the story, so I never knew that, and so I just did this Bomb magazine where I talked about the centennial, and I talked about this. And one of the reasons why I decided to stay here, because like when, I didn't know I was going to be, because I had an apartment upstairs, so I didn't know I was going to be living on Black Wall Street until I was actually here and started seeing the plaques on the road.
Yeah.
And so I had to process all of it. And so I started thinking a lot about what my family went through, and then just so happens, over the couple of years, I just, I Googled him because he was a public figure in Orlando. He had a big old church and was very respected, but was always on us about, telling us about history. And, like they really passed stuff. That's why I want to do this, because they really pass stuff down to us orally, but make sure stuff is archived too by talking to the paper. Although one of my uncles just refused to speak, about any of this stuff, like, like on record. And so basically, my great grandmother was civil rights, an activist.
Really?
And
Wow.
and it was really like an underground railroad type of thing that I didn't even know. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Because Stuckey still is unincorporated. They won't let them run pipes or city anything. You know what I mean? They won't let them.
Even today.
Today they won't let, because they was like, once they give us city water, like it's over. You know what I mean? So it was always off the grid, and it's still kind of off the grid. So like if something, so people could come out and hide and stay, because it was like the woods, and how like depending on the situation, like they just help each other out. So this is like the story of the Groveland Four.
Wow.
And
Four.
Yeah, and then they came through Stuckey and shot up, and then the National Guard and everything had to come.
So this is like
1949.
This was like a whole like massacre type of situation.
Yeah. It was a raid, because they killed 3 people, but I guess they didn't really kill anybody in Stuckey, because a lot of people left, but some people left and never came back. Okay. So it was a raid. It was a and it wasn't like Rosewood, but it was like. It could have been, but the people, a lot of people just ran and like left. But like, man. God, so I grew up knowing all of this, and so my perspective on race relations, it was a sundown town too. Like around us, like we were told not to go certain places after dark. You know what I mean? At a certain time, and don't go by yourself.
Yeah. And
don't be out there trying to fight by yourself if you ain't got no backup. You know what I mean? Like.
So you really grew up in the thick of like race relations.
Because my mother and one of my cousins say like they were my mother was a part of the first ones to integrate in that area, like and it was in high school. And my cousin said they did it a year early because like the parents wanted them to get like adjusted, so they did like a year. And so but then some kind of way, I hope some other people got these. Some of the decades are missing, because then this hits the 90s. I think it's just my book. The pages got tore out, and then we had like people take out if they want to buy an article, and show their family or whatever, show family photos. That
is really cool.
Yeah, and so, but it wasn't all history, because of course people were like, well, y'all left out this family, that family. We were just trying to give people a taste, or just to start something, but we never went back. And did an official book.
So,
but yeah, so
did you leave Stuckey to go to? Well, before we go there, One thing,
And I did this before I was even considering myself doing collages. You know what I mean? So it's just like,
oh wow,
you know what I
look at
mean?
that,
So it's like, yeah. So it's like I wasn't even making art like this. Like I was making like in undergrad, I wasn't even painting or anything. I was just doing documentary films and narrative films in undergrads. So
one thing you said was your dad would go to work and you would get depressed and sad and he would tell you to sing. What did singing mean to you?
I think it was like an outlet because I remember it just made me excited because I remember like he had like a Billy Ocean tape, you know, the cassette tape, and I remember I was listening to that all the time, and I thought like, gosh, how, you know, and I just love just. I just love to hear like singing and like performance. It just sat with me, but I remember when I was like maybe 7 or 8, maybe I was younger. But I remember when my grandma's, I guess she started letting me go to church. I might have been going to church younger than that, but I remember I got baptized when I was 9. But I think I started going to church a little bit before that. And I remember I would love to go on the fourth Sunday. And so, but I remember like I would want to sing in a choir, but I was kind of like too young. And I think that's what prompted my cousin to start the Jubilees because it was like, it was us young ones, we was growing up and all of us could carry tunes or whatnot. And so, but I remember they let me be in the junior choir before they started the Jubilees. And so I was just like the little boy that just wanted to be up there so bad that they just let me, you know, let me do it. But I remember like my cousin played the piano and I would like stand behind her and just watch her fingers because it was something that just made it so exciting just to hear that sound coming out of the piano and just to hear the chords and hear the progression. It was just something in me that just, I don't know if identified with that is the perfect word, but it moved me. And so so even now like singing, it's just this a place where I can go where I can totally escape. And almost, even though like I know my lyrics and the stories could be like suggestive and taboo and stuff you're not supposed to talk about it, but like it's still the most freeing space for me like to sing and like just hear the music and just like it's almost like I just let everything go and just put everything there and then I just walk off and leave it. Like I feel like I had a hangover for like 2 days and I had not one drop of alcohol during that performance at the Lowdown.
Really?
And the next day I think I just went to the grocery store, but I was in the bed most of the day because it was just like it felt like I had been out drinking. And it's also a very vulnerable space too. But it is, yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just something about this freeing and like just even when I hear my chorus that I put together, like it's just something in me just goes somewhere. It just kind of just turns on. Because even sometimes right before performance, I'm not so sure. And even that night, I drank some tea and then I was like, gosh, then my voice is sometimes to do weird stuff, you know, because I have a hernia and I have to take medication for acid reflux. So you know what I mean? So it's like I kind of be careful, but it's like I need the honey tea, you know what I mean? But it's like I can't trigger the acid stuff, you know what I mean? So it's always like this weird balance. And so sometimes I get a little nervous, but once I get into it, and I just kind of just like, it's almost like kind of just let it go. Just be, just do it. Like these, it's, you know, their stories, their narratives, even though some of it is part real, part imagination, not everything is my personal story. I just always feel like, okay, well, somebody out there probably need to hear this. You know what I mean? Somebody out there identifies, will probably, you know, identify with this. Or maybe some artists need to be inspired. So I just put it all out there, you know, and it just, because I'm a giver, you know what I mean? So it's just like, I just like to give myself, but also, cliche as corny as it sounds, it's also a place that sets me free. You know what I mean? Where I can just be completely free. And so I think they just recognize that, you know, like when I was singing or something, I stopped whining. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. When I was playing my keyboard, like I was like not getting in trouble. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, and so I want to tell a story. When I was with my grandmother, like I'll never forget when they paved our roads, and so we had like pavement roads, and I'll never forget one day I came home from school. My grandmother was like, "Look under the bed," and so because my grandmother was deaf too, that's the other part that which while I was also fascinated that she watched soap operas. But she said, "Look under the bed," and I said, "Okay." So I go, and it was just a regular day coming home from school. I think it was like a chilly day. I had on my little sweater. And I look under the bed, and it was a pair of skates. And so I put on them skates and I like skated up something that day. It was like,
on the new page
on the new payroll. Like when they finished the
road.
road, that was like, that was
That's a
like,
big deal.
yeah, I know. It was like the big, just a skate on the paved road. And it was a smooth road.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that, like.
I mean, it's just like things that you would sometimes take for granted.
Yeah, exactly.
Paved roads.
Yeah.
That was like a big deal.
Yeah, because we had dirt roads. I mean, I probably was like 8 or 9, maybe like 8 or 9, when, maybe young, maybe 7, you know what I mean? Because I was, and I got on them skates and I just skated and skated and skated and spin around, you know what I mean? It was just like,
in heaven.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just like, and so I always think back to them, I was like, wow, a paved road was such a huge deal. And then in high school when we got cable, because that's why also when I used to go to my aunt in Webster, she had cable. So it was like you was open up to a whole new world like BT. You know what I mean? It's like, y'all can like y'all can watch videos all day, you know what I mean? So we got cable. I remember one of the first things I saw was MTV's like In Vogue making of giving him something he could feel like the behind the scene thing. And I just remember like it was like a whole nother world had opened up just to have cable. It was the same thing with the paved roads. Like, oh my gosh, we got a paved road. Like, and it was called Maxwell Avenue. So it was named after, our family. And and we had just one paved road, really. I think we had the one paved road. And then I think when my aunt and them stayed, they had like Douglas Road. And then, so on the other side of the highway, they had paved roads, but like our side just had one that went around the loop. But we stayed on an avenue that was just dirt. And then there was another road that was just dirt. You know what I mean? So it's just like we just had, so I think that's why they call it Stucky Loop, because it's just that one loop road. But I don't even know if that road was always paved. No, that road wasn't always paved. I think they paved that one first. Wow. That road wasn't always paved. Wow. It was just like we had Highway 50, and then Highway 50 turned off into dirt roads. Jeez. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So it was like rural like that.
So you left Stucky to go to college?
Yeah. So I left Stucky to go to college in Tampa, University of South Florida. Okay. And I had to go to summer school, you take the summer semester before you actually start, because I was considered at risk. Because even though I made the student body president, like I ended up taking algebra and algebra 2 and geometry in my senior year to catch up. Wow. And then I think I passed both with like a high D. It would have been a C now, but it was like a 70, you know what I mean? Or I don't know, like I was better in geometry for whatever reason than algebra, and I took him, and then Matthew said he don't know how I did it. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, he's like, he said, but somehow he did it. Yeah, and then I scored like a good enough on the ACT, but it was like, I mean, my guidance counselor literally called USF because she knew about the programs, and then she made a phone call, and then I think that day in her office I was in the program, and so I went, to that summer. It was a bunch of us. And I think it might have been a part of affirmative action or something too. And so, so a big group of us started off that summer, and mostly Black kids. And then, I went through, it took 5 years in undergrad, and there was like my sophomore year where I was thinking about dropping out because, I had like one semester, I had like a 1.9. I mean, that was like, my uncle was like, you might want And then I think my grandmother passed away. And in some kind of way, I don't know, like it was rough, but I just stuck it out. And then some kind of way, my school was going through a transition because I started off in mass communications, like in production. And then I ended up in the art department. And so because I want to do films and that sort of thing, like independent films. And so I don't know, like I struggled. I didn't pass the intro to electronic music to get in the studio, the recording studio. Like I took it twice and still can't get a high enough grade to get in there, like to work in the studio, but I work with friends and stuff like that. So I had moments like that. I didn't pass improv because I was kind of shy, and you know what I mean? Like everything for me have to be scripted versus like I just didn't like. I didn't know what was going to come out because it was just so, so much I felt like was in my childhood that I just did not want to explore in improv. So I remember it was moments like that, like these areas that I was really passionate about that I couldn't pass the written test or the academic version of it. So, but I ended up exploring all these things in my art where I had more freedom. So like I didn't major in theater because it, like clearly I had some blocks, which is probably why I mean, most of the songs are still scripted, you know what I mean? But I did get better at accessing, you know what I mean, like those darker, hurtful places that, you know what I mean, that I didn't always want to access in improv because, like, so, improv, sometimes people end up bawling, crying, and having breakdowns. And I just wasn't ready to go there at the time. So that was difficult. Electronic media was just like keeping up with so many, I want to say like German names, like foreign names, you know what I mean, for like a written test. I think is why I couldn't get into, you know what I mean, like the history of electronic music. You had to take the history of electronic music to get in the studio. And I think like so much it was just so foreign where like I played by ear, you know what I mean? Like I still can compose and just hear what needs to go there and what shouldn't be there. You know what I mean? Like what might be distracting the composition and, you know what I mean, what's complementing, because I still work that way. And so I had to kind of go around and be creative just to, to get that sort of, work done in terms of like acting and making music. But I ended up in the art department, and so it was like a freeing thing. And so I made, I think it is a video that goes with this too. Yeah, a video documentary that goes with this. It's probably on VHS over there somewhere. And so I started making the narrative videos, and man, I just really like. One day, when I was upstairs, I came across my transcript. I was like, oh my gosh, how did I do it? Because I ended up in graduate school. Like the school they were transitioning out of analog filmmaking, going digital, and a lot of professors from the 70s was graduating. And so I applied to be in the same grad program, and they felt like I hadn't got everything I should have gotten with my potential in undergrad, that they let me into the graduate program with new professors. And then I maintained my 3.0, through the 3 years. But I looked at my transcripts, and I think that improv might have been when I got a not good grade. I remember I was so upset, and then my professor was like, don't worry about it, it's okay. And so, yeah, so I ended up getting my master's, like this little kid that almost didn't make it to college, you know what I mean? And just realized at the last minute that he wanted to go. And yeah, somehow I made it in. But the other thing I always tell people this story, like my mother was like on drugs, mentally ill. Like I didn't see my mother at all during high school because she was locked away in a mental institution. I think they put her in jail. I think she was in prison once. And they took her out of prison and put her in a mental institution. And so I just remember, like, I didn't see my mother there like for 4 years, like at all in high school. And then I remember when I graduated from high school, the insurance lady said, "Oh, Caleb, I have something for you." I was like, "What?" She said, "Oh, your mother, when you was younger, your mother took out a policy on you and said if he ever went to college, he'd get $1,000 to help." Yeah.
Wow.
And I remember having a conversation because I would be with her sometimes, say, "Yeah, when you grow up, I want you to go to college and get your education and stuff." And I remember my father, when he used to take me to the field, like he stopped taking me to the field because I was kind of bad. I used to be out there throwing bell peppers, you know what I mean, like hitting people when they, they working in a bell pepper just drop. And so, but he told me, because I was like, "Why you want to let me go to me?" He said, "No, I want you to have an office job. Like it's hard work. It's just like," but even him saying that, but my mother, because because my father was present, but with my mother, to hear the insurance lady say she had $1,000 for me, and then I can flash back to when I was a kid saying she wanted me to get my education. I thought like, oh my gosh, in all that craziness, and all that turmoil, there was a window of hope. You know what I mean? It's just like a window of hope. And I just can't like ever get over that. You know what I mean? Because I just like, wow, like.
She was always thinking.
She was always, yeah, she was. Because she even attempted suicide. And people always say like, because my grandmother let me read the letter. Like I came home from school one day. My grandma was deaf, but I guess it was the best way for her to explain to me what happened. But in the letter, my mother said she loved her kids and she knew she was sick, but she couldn't get past the illness. And she didn't want, she loved us, but she couldn't really take care of us. You know what I mean? So she suffered from depression and all of that. So that's why I was always not like resentful of her. You know what I mean? Because I just thought like, but even for her to do that, like it was a window of hope. You know what I mean? It was something inside of her. You know what I mean? That knew better than her situation. You know what I mean? And so that's why like drugs and mental illness is a serious thing. So so her straight A student stuff was still in there, but it just couldn't really rise above all that other stuff or break through all that other stuff once it had hold of her. And so, that, inspired me. And so then I just stuck it out, and then I moved to New York and stuck it out some more.
Was New York grad school or after grad school?
After grad school. Okay. So I graduated in 2003, moved to New York. I had got into this residency called Skowhegan in Maine before I graduated. So I had like a year left. And so that that shifted my world. It's called Skowhegan. It's up in Skowhegan, Maine. And I'll never forget, I was a grad assistant, but I used to work in the office in the administrative part. And I remember just standing in the hallway looking at the bulletin board and just looking at stuff. And so I was looking at this pamphlet, and then my mentor, who I was working for, she stopped. She said, "Oh, you should apply for that." And I was like, I don't know if I want to go live in the woods for the summer. I was like, I'm from Stuckey. That's like the woods. Like, I don't know if I want to do that. She said, "No, you should apply." So I just applied, not even thinking. And then during that time, they were only giving like 3 people full rides. And they offered me a full scholarship to this thing. And I didn't even I just applied because she told me to, and she was my mentor, and I trusted her. And so I applied and got in. And that year, like 50% of the artists was from New York, and then the 50% was from like other places. And so that gave me, I don't know if gateway the right word, but it gave me like a bridge or a pathway to move to New York, because I had met so many artists that we're all starting out. And so I moved to New York, slept on couches. But even before that was, before I graduated, like some of the friends that I met at Skowhegan, like one of their friends who ended up becoming a friend of mine was dating Molly Shannon, like this actress from Saturday Night Live. And it was the first year of Art Basel. And they was like, "Okay, you should give Molly your stuff. We're going to Art Basel." And so one of my cousins flew to Tampa. Not cousins, she's a friend. Jeez. I always call my close friends my cousins. So she flew to Tampa, and then we drove down to Miami. And so I had my little VHS tapes or whatever. Then I chickened out. You know what I mean? So I didn't give them to her right then. So we hung out with Molly, during Miami Basel. And I chickened out. Then I get to New York. And then when I moved to New York, they set me up for an interview for the Ricky Lake show to work as a production assistant, to be on a producer's track. And so I ended up not getting that job. And so I finally gave Molly the tape. And she's like, "Well, Caleb, they just hired a bunch of people." Because I didn't even was thinking like to try to audition. You know what I mean? I was just so fucking green and like just. So anyway, they ended up hiring Keenan, Fred Armstrong, like that whole group. And so then I ended up working as an extra in 2004.
On Saturday Night Live?
Yeah. And so I worked, they had me in a Debbie Downer skit. I think it was Colin Firth. But
I remember the Debbie Downer skit.
Yeah, but I think so what happened, the first time I was on there, I don't know why because even when I went there, like I got to shake people, I got to meet people like Keenan, like shake their hand because they knew I was a friend of Molly. So I was kind of like in the fucking door, but was just like, not just, I don't know, like just, not to say I would have gotten a part, because I couldn't do like accents and stuff. In my accent, I can't really, it's hard for me to eliminate my accent. But I remember it was a Debbie Downer skit. They had me sitting in the background, and it was a funny skit. But like doing rehearsals, because you rehearse like, I think that we rehearsed like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But then I think that Friday they got Martha Stewart. You remember the whole Martha Stewart thing? And so then they rewrote the whole show in a day. And so our skit got cut, because the Debbie Downer. And so sometimes they rerun those skits that got cut in syndication, but I haven't come across it anywhere. And so that was one skit. And then the second skit that I got to do, because you didn't know when it was going to call. And at the time I had like dreads too. So I probably, couldn't really have a universal look at the time. But I was in a skit with Snoop Dogg. Wow. And it was called, I don't know, like I was a part of his family. And then it was the Appalachian Hospital skit, one of those skits. And it was when Snoop was on it. So that's in syndication sometimes. And but I just walked by with the family, people like, hey, that's Caleb. Yeah. And so I was hanging out on SNL, and then, I don't know, like, I was gonna try to wait, to get audition, but then when it rolled around again, but then my art career took off, and then I think I might have sent them a tape again, but then my art career took off, and I sort of went down that path.
So when you say your art career took off, explain to me like what that means.
So I remember just hanging out in New York. Sleeping on people's couches. I think I got work for artists. So basically, I don't know if I even had my own place at this time, but I know I was renting rooms from people. But I do remember working for a temp agency. I was living in Harlem. I actually worked for a telemarketer, and I was living in like West Harlem with the Dominicans, and I was renting a room, and then I just remembered this art dealer who I had met in Skowhegan, because his best friend was there that summer. I just had passed one of my VHS tapes off to him, and so I would just go to their gallery to hang out and just drink beer and just hang out with artists, because we just sort of found our clan that we met at Skowhegan. So I would just go there and hang out, not expecting anything. I didn't expect anything, but I also didn't know that people were watching me. You know what I mean? Like, as a potential artist to be successful. Like, it was just like, I mean, I had a master's degree and I had to go get food stamps. You know what I mean? I was trying to hide that. And then I told the worker, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. She's like, embarrassed for what? We have people that have PhDs, so I have to fall back on food stamps for a while. You know what I mean? Like, don't be embarrassed. And so, but that got me through, though. That $100 and something. I don't know if it was a week or a month, how long, or every 2 weeks or whatever. But, and so I did hide that. And so, I had my little food stamp card, and then, just like arts and end jobs, you know what I mean? Renting rooms. And so, I don't know, like, I was just hanging out there because I was going there. And they said, well, Kayla, we don't know what's going to happen, but we want to just give you a show or, a project, and we'll just see what happened in the back room. It was like in the back room again. I was like, sure, I'll, do it. So they did that, and then the Snoop Museum in Harlem, because I would send my tapes there, and sometimes just drop off my tapes. And I would apply to the residency, but I never got in the residency. But then they told me that they felt like my work was kind of already doing something. And I was kind of there, but it was like raunchy, so I don't know if it was a face of, not only have raunchy people in the residence, but, that might have been because of my work, with other artists that work similar to, that they just finally opened up in. But I just remember they put me in a show called African Queen. And then I was in this group show I was in this project at Tasson's Benjamin. Somebody else was in the main room. And then I just never forget, I remember like I would, put my little videos in both of the shows. I think I had made some photogravures that I made in college. And all I know is one morning my cell phone rings, and I'm in this room that I'm renting from the Dominicans with my little computer. And I think I just had some friends that just let me shoot in their apartments. And then one of my professors, he changed universities. He started teaching at Rutgers. And and he let me use cameras from that school just to make videos. So it was like really rough, but somehow I was able to make work. My aunt, I don't know, maybe was it the second show? Anyway, at some point, my aunt brought me a video camera from the Home Shopping Network and sent it to New York.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it was like, so somehow I got videos made with my old stuff that I had in school. And all I know is I woke up one morning, it was a Good Friday.
Mhm.
My friend was like, Caleb, you are not gonna believe this. And I was like, what? She's like, listen. She said, you got a review in the New York Times. I was like, what? So I said, she said, you want me to read it for her? I was like, yeah. So she's like, and it opened with A Star Is Born. And it was a review of like those tiny little shows that, you know what I mean, that they just took a chance on me. And I didn't have any expectations. And I had this review, and then all of a sudden, like the video started selling. And even I was thinking about like leaving because it was still kind of rough because it was like videos don't sell as quick, but for whatever reason mine was selling, but they was affordable prices. And I don't know, like I ended up getting the Tiffany Comfort Lewis grant, or the Lewis Comfort Tiffany grant, which was $20,000. So I was able to quit my job at the Mark, that was the Mark Hotel, which I was getting up 5 o'clock in the morning for, and they wanted to hire me. They wanted to pay me like $20,000 a year. So it was the same thing as a grant. And then I got a free studio from I applied to the studio program. So I had a $20,000 and a studio. And so then I just, from there, like things just started to progress. And then I don't know, then I found myself working with fashion designers. I was doing lectures at schools. I was doing a lecture at Columbia University. James Franco was in the audience, and he had just finished doing his first story arc for General Hospital. Then I remember I went to Miami to do a performance for this museum, like it's called a Midnight Special. You know, that 70s show, but we was just doing the art version. Um, and he came up to me after and said, yeah, I was at your lecture at Columbia, and I want to know if I could pitch you to the producers of General Hospital. And I was like, what is, like, he's like, yeah, I was like, okay, sure. He said, but I would like to be in your videos too. Like, I love your work. He's like, I'll do anything. Like, just, And I was like, okay. I was like, sure. So I didn't really, I knew I was going to see him again. And I was like, okay, well, I forgot to put him in my work. But, I didn't even because with James, people follow him everywhere, but I didn't even hang out with them that night. I think I just kind of went somewhere else. And I think I read about all of them hanging out on the beach, just having a good time. But I just went somewhere else because I just, I had an instinct that I would see him again. But I also thought there's no way General Hospital is going to say yes to me being on their show. I mean, I had literally just got off the pool table in a leotard singing a song. You know what I mean? So I was like, these people's not going to say yes. It was my character Taiwan that I did, but it was there was way, the one with the flower, but it was way raunchier back in the day. And I think I might have performed Asshole, but we was having sound issues or something. So I don't know, but I just kept I don't know. It was a weird night, but it was at, this hotel or whatever. It was Miami Art Basel. So, but I just remember, and I think that year I had gotten to Sundance because from my show at the Studio Museum in Harlem, that got a lot of press and in a lot of magazines. Because they gave me Studio Museum, although they never put me in a residency, they put me in this show called African Queen Frequency. And then it was so much excitement and buzz around my work, they gave me a survey show. I was just 4 years. So, you know what I mean? It was videos from 2002 to 2009.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So how many, that's not, so
7 years.
7 years. So it was a short period. They was covering and so that got a lot of press. And so it led me to collaborate with Proenza Schuler. And then I worked with Chloe Sevigny, the actress, and then Leah Kabita, the supermodel. And then some other downtown people, before Chloe, that that was in that movie Kids, like Leo Fitzpatrick. I had done some videos with him. And Leo and PJ were on The Wire together. So I ended up working with PJ. Wow. So I was working with people from like The Wire, the Kids, downtown scene, and then fashion models, fashion designers, and then James comes along, and then I'm on General Hospital because they said yes.
Recognize the full circle moment of you being on a soap opera. Oh my God! Growing up with soap opera, watching them and stuff.
Yeah. So the full moment is that my family threw this big old party, like for my debut appearance, and then they talked about my great grandmother would forgive me because I was on an ABC soap and not a CBS soap.
Yeah, CBS soaps are superior to ABC soaps.
Yeah, and and then they threw a party, and then like the Orlando Sentinel, I think ran like 3 stories that summer. The Tampa newspaper ran stories. The college, they might have ran stories at college, like the whole Central Florida, like all. And I was just floating. So when I get to General Hospital, like for like the fittings and stuff, this is what they had.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like they had this actually
when
we met face to face for the first time. And then although he was in my lecture, and it was a lecture for Carol Walker's class, because Carol Walker was there. So I was nervous about Carol Walker that I didn't even pick up, that James was in the room. And so then they had like all of my characters up to that point, the different flowers that I was choosing my hair. Like this is from Interview magazine. This is me with Leah, Tabidi, Chloe 70, just the stuff up to that point. And so this is their little chart on me.
That is so cool.
Yeah. And so my family threw this party. The newspaper was there. And then I think they finally got it, you know what I mean? Like kind of what my work meant to the art world. Because before it was just like, when you gonna meet Tyler Perry, like that kind of, you know what I mean? It was, because I was doing acting and stuff. And I wrote a couple of stage plays, but they were so raunchy that they never got produced. And so I just, but I never saw myself going down that road, the Tyler Perry road. Although people, early on in my career, they would have those conversations, but I just never thought that we were really in the same space, occupying the same space. I get like superficially people, because you have on a wig and you're doing drag and it's comedy and, but I was inspired by Eddie Murphy's Nutty Professor, like for my, the Braswell family, like my first family. And then we discussed Flip Wilson and all of those people in college and, even Japanese kabuki, like all different types of drag. But then the General Hospital thing, it was, that is what made me just believe. Only because like, I felt like I attracted that and manifested that. Like, although I never thought I would get on a soap opera, but the desire was there. You know what I mean? And I was making my own videos, soap operas, like through the art world. And people would show up and watch them. They was in museums and galleries. And it was almost like, it was YouTube and TikTok before, that actually happened.
But you know what I mean? Also making soap operas
as a kid. Yeah, exactly. And so then it just translated, it translated into my college work. And then the other full circle moment at the General Hospital party happens to be the same year the media teacher was retiring. And so she shows up to the party with a VHS tape. She said, "Caleb, I have something for you." You say, I'm retiring this year and I was going through all my stuff and I found one of your old tapes. Mind you, all those tapes had been lost. All the soap operas had been lost. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've been talking about these things in interviews like forever. And it's one that actually represents that time in my life. And so, so it came back, you know what I mean? And so it was like, and I was like, oh my gosh. And so then I started, and then I think it took me years later when I started showing them in my lectures. And now I just added to my body of work because people say they can see the seeds of, you know what I mean, what I actually end up doing in those earlier videos, even though it wasn't dragging all that, but they were my little version of soap operas.
So what does your art mean in the art world? What did you want your body of art to represent in this larger collective art world?
I feel like I don't want to say it's complicated, but like all those magazines and stuff, like most of those magazines I'm in. And so that was like a period from like 2005, I guess, to the present, but I don't get as much as press as I used to. But I think for me is that my work was helping expand what the meaning of video and performance art could be. And based on what people have said and written about, which I try not to get too caught up in, that it just offered new ideas, you know what I mean? And like new, what do they call it? New, not new choices, but new possibilities. Like when you know, artists they look at my work, then they get inspired, you know, and they go off and do something of their own, and that kind of keeps happening. So I feel like it became something that inspired a lot of artists. Like for me, I just wanted a platform to talk about some things that I felt like people weren't talking about. Like a friend told me, like, Caleb, the gay community needed that character Taiwan at the time. You know, when the character debuted in 2003, and I started doing live performances in 2006, he was like, it's kind of like Erykah Badu. Like, we needed that in the late 90s, you know what I mean? And so he was saying, like, people, the queer community and artwork, like, they just needed that at the time, and why it was so popular during that period. But for me, it was like an outlet to express myself. You had to talk about the structure of the family dynamics, of the structure of the family and those dynamics. And what about the queer kid? Like, why everything about queerness has to be comedy? You know what I mean? Why are we forced to be silent? You can't talk about our experience. You know what I mean? You know, being from Southern Florida, you can't bring anybody home. If you're gay, you're not really supposed to love the Lord because He doesn't love what you do. You know what I mean? So you can't like, if you're gonna have that spiritual relationship, you have to be a certain way to even have it. You know what I mean? To get into heaven, when you know what I mean. So it's like being told like something is wrong with you because how you are. So that's kind of what was the seed. So if you go on YouTube and watch all my children conversations with children, and you'll hear the characters like just having those conversations, and that idea came from this book, Neil Donald Walsh, his name. He had a book series called Conversations with God that I read, and I was following Oprah, her code.
Our book club.
Yeah, I was following her. And so, but I was always into like, you know, the Yana Von Zahn, you know, like in the Eckhart Tolle, you know, so I was always into that part of it. And so I read all those books, and they kind of like, one day my soul did open up once I started to figure out what was going on. Because that's one of the title of Iyanla Van Zandt books. One day my soul opened up.
Oh.
And so I started just reading, like, I just started reading a lot of self-help books to kind of get me to the place. And so I kind of came out through my work. I didn't really have a big thing like, oh, I'm gay, you know, like I just started doing it through my work and just, you know what I mean, kept at it. But people always say my work was kind of sincere. They said they didn't know how to judge it or critique it because it was too honest. It wasn't like cold, like they felt like a lot of artwork is. And then I wasn't like trying to appeal to the market. It's like, I remember studying Nollywood films in college and how they would make these movies themselves. They didn't always show them in traditional theaters. They showed them like in spaces they created sometimes. And then they'll leave with a cliffhanger like a soap opera. And then people will come back 6 months later and watch the next one. And told myself, I said, well, if people start watching these in the art world, I'm just going to keep making them. And people was watching them. And so I just kept making them. And so for me, it was just like a platform. Like I literally thought with all my children that I was going to get hired by a TV network or somebody, and it was going to like, let me just remake my ideas. But then the art world was like, they saw the historical context of it in the tradition I fit in. And then they just started showing it as it was. You know, and then once I got to New York, I started talking to older video and performance artists. And they say, yeah, like we used to do stuff on public access, and, you know, like, but then like, you know, like the big wigs take over those spaces and then kind of push the artists out. And so my work was sort of just like this DIY thing that a lot of artists back in the 60s and 70s were doing. Like you almost doing something. You taking the same materials that the TVs and networks have. You kind of doing something different. So in my case, I was taking a consumer camera and just making these full-fledged, thought-out soap operas, but they wasn't like produced like network TV, but they had storylines that people actually followed and actually cared about. And so it was almost predating what we see. Well, so it's predating what we see now, but the truth is, we was making it. We started doing this stuff when I was in undergrad, but the internet crashed back then, and you know what I mean. So the internet crashed because we were making like I did a soap opera called The Winding Road, and the thing was you go out and say you catch a rich. So we did have sponsor. Like he actually funded our first album, but you just go find a rich person who wanted to promote something, and then you got them to pay for your thing. So you made this film, and then you did a commercial or something for them. You know what I mean? That's how it was. And then you just put it online. And then, but somehow the model just didn't work. So it crashed. So even when YouTube and all that came around, like I was even hesitant to put my stuff on YouTube. I say, because we went through this like in the 90s. Like people not gonna pay that type of money anymore, you know what I mean? Because of what happened in the 90s. And so they didn't. So YouTube was free for a long time. And then they started capitalizing on it once they got people sucked in. And that's what social media did. Everything was free. And then they figured out a way to start charging people. And so yeah, my work predates like TikTok and all of that, but literally we was doing that in the 90s. But then it had nowhere else to go. And so the only place I could, I guess the only place I could go was the art world. You know what I mean? Once the internet crashed and then was no like, none of that was happening on the internet for that, you know, for a little while. And so I ended up having my work packaged in the art world. And even people brought my videos because they like nothing else like that was happening at the time. Although I don't think I was the only person probably, you know, home dressing up and doing stuff, but somehow I was able to break through in the art world. And so it just kind of evolved into that. And so a lot of people tell me that my characters and stuff represent what was happening in the downtown, New York downtown in the 80s and like early 90s, but a lot of the queer people, the gay men died from AIDS. And so, you know what I mean? They wasn't around. And so, you know what I mean? Like my work somehow was a continuation of something that had stopped. But you know what I mean? But yeah, and that's what they told me, and that's why I was embraced by the downtown New York art world, studio museum in Harlem. You know, I ended up getting in the MoMA. I'm in the Met. I'm in the Whitney, and but they say because even I remember when I was doing lectures, I was raising my fee, and then they stopped. They said, "Well, we don't have to pay you what we used to pay you because like other people are doing that type of work now." Like I was told that. So it's like literally, so they basically was telling me that I paved the way for people, but like they can get other people for a cheaper rate that's doing similar stuff. You know what I mean? So it's kind of weird. I mean, I was told that. So
can you talk through your characters? Are they all on the wall here?
No, they're not all on the wall. And I don't know why. I don't have one. I don't have my No, but I can. I'm gonna pull up an image.
Okay.
Because those are just. Those are just.
I'm gonna get this wall real quick.
Those are. Gosh. Those are a few of the characters. That's like the house. So the house is called the Queen Rose Art House.
And this house right here.
Yeah, so it's named after the Queen Rose family. My fictitious family. And so this is the Queen Rose family. And it's actually a family tree, but the tree is in a box somewhere in here. Oh. And something told me to pull them out, but these are like all the characters. So it's like over 30 that I portrayed.
Oh, wow. I thought they were just the 3 from Lowdown.
Oh, no. It's like 30
something. Oh, my goodness.
So yeah, if you go on YouTube and watch the video, you'll see. Yeah.
Okay. See, I thought they were just the 3 characters from the Lowdown. I had no idea you played this many characters.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Let's see. Let me finish getting this wall real quick. Gotta make sure I get the space. This is really amazing. It really kind of shows like community.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to do. Oh yes, this is family tree here, but it's so delicate. Yeah, so those let's see. So these like some of my first. I don't know. It's so weird how like this stuff happened. Like it's like I think this guy, this filmmaker here, won an Oscar for that movie a couple of years ago.
Oh wow.
That Asian film, like not the one that was this year, but gosh, I forget. It was a couple of years ago. But this is like my first big articles.
And that's what character?
That's
is
Taiwan. Yeah.
Taiwan.
Yeah.
The one with the flower.
Yeah.
Wow. What's that about living color?
Oh, I was just say he cites Keena Ivory in his 19th sketch comedy show In Living Color and televised performances of drag queens RuPaul as influences.
Oh, yes.
As well as early John Waters films.
Wow. That's really amazing.
Yeah.
And did you paint these?
No, somebody else painted those. Like somebody else gave it as a gift. So my collages. So these like it's like embarrassment when you move around so much, and then I have to basically take these. So I'm gonna just redo this with acrylic, but I'm gonna take this off and just have it reframed and just do it because it's gouache and the gouache just don't hold up if you don't take care of it.
Oh.
But this is this is character Lisa Braswell. This is actually my character Kay Braswell, his mother and father.
Okay.
So I'm playing Lisa, but this is Tunde Edebempe from this group called TV on the Radio. So he's an actor too and a musician.
Okay.
And so he came. When I taught at Howard for a semester, he came up and shot with me and talked to my class.
Wow.
But I was also casting people that I felt could be relatives as well from the family tree. Just kind of trick people out sometimes.
Yeah.
This is like, I don't know, this is also Kate, but this is like a film I did called Romantic Loner. This is sort of just him and his lovers.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that's not all my collage paintings. Most of my paintings, because I did a series of paintings about the Tulsa Racing Massacre.
Yes.
And so, where is Bomb Magazine? Jeez. I should have put all this stuff out. Because the paintings are they're back here, but I'm just like, okay, I really don't have Bomb Magazine in here. Oh, that's so old. I really don't have Bomb Magazine in here. Like easy accessible. That's crazy. I have to. I mean, I have it online, but I'm just trying to. Well, I guess I'll show you this for now. So this is like one of my first CDs. A friend of mine did this, one of my first albums. Mm-hmm. And so they did this painting of me. So this is also like V Magazine when I was really. Is
that your name on the front there? Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like, I never forget. Is it in the other bag? She has so many. This has so many doggone hats in here. Did someone tear my page out? It's in the bag. It's not in this one, but anyway, here is kind of like my first. Yeah, my first. We did. So I directed it. Yeah. So I was like the creative director, but then I was.
That's you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Thank you. But it was something I used to have. Maybe it's not in this issue, but so this issue. I feel like I did something in here though. Oh yeah, so it's like just be hanging out. I figure it's the reason.
Oh, yep, there you are. Wow.
Yeah, and so I was really maybe it's just really, I don't know, it was good times back then. So it was just like I had this momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, but it's like you lived it, but it's just, oh yeah, here we go. So yeah, so it was back when I used to get go to parties with Janet Jackson,
Oh
like
my
IST. I remember hanging out with IST and Coco because I was obsessed with the reality show.
Oh yep.
I think Toni Braxton was at this party too. Yeah, Lady Gaga. I think Lady Gaga performed. Maybe she performed. This Estelle. Yeah, Toni Braxton was there. Like all these people. Yeah.
What a group.
Yeah, so it was such. I mean, just like such great times.
So all of this amazingness on the East Coast, New York City, hanging with all these amazing stars, and now Tulsa is lucky enough to have you.
Yeah, and so I basically I was looking for a change. I'm still trying to look for that bomb, but I can show it to you online if I can't find it. Because I can't believe it. But I bet you as soon as we finish, I'll see it. So I came to Tulsa. My mother passed away, and then I was just like looking for change, and so I was sort of because like all of that happened, but then like my income changed, and so I was sort of like tired of like like I remember it got to the point where I was like in New York. I'll split my time between New York and Florida. And then I would get up like 5 o'clock in the morning, like on a Monday or Tuesday to go teach a class. Maybe the class was on Tuesday, but sometimes I would leave on Monday, or I would leave 5 o'clock in the morning to catch the train to teach the 8 a.m. class at PAFA in Philadelphia. And so although I love talking to the students and they wanted me there, I just thought I needed change. So I just started applying to different things. And I remember someone sent me the Tulsa Artist Fellowship application the very first year. And then I was like, Tulsa, like, So I didn't even apply. But then a couple of years later, I thought, well, why don't I just apply? Like, I need a change, you know what I mean? Like, I was willing to go anywhere. It was like, I was like, I'll just go anywhere because, like, I just, like, it's just not happening the way it was. Like, I felt like, like, I don't know, like, I felt like I had lost a connection to the world. It was just really, I just needed to really heal. And so I got into the fellowship, and then I was only supposed to be here for 2 years. And then they started this thing called the Art Integration Grant. And so they was saying the type of projects like social practice projects. And so even though I did this festival, and of course it resembles this now, I never put my art and my community activism as one thing. I never saw them as mutually, you know what I mean? I just saw them as two separate things. like it just didn't click for me in that way. So I went to school and made my art, but then I just did this stuff. But I guess I was making documentaries, but it wasn't like, yeah, it wasn't like, but I did do an installation with my family, like where I showed like videos and family videos at a family reunion. It was an installation, but I didn't view it as social practice. You know what I mean? So I didn't view it as that, but I was doing that back then, but I just didn't have a name for it. And then I started doing the narrative videos. So, and then I moved away from Florida, so I wasn't involved in the festival anymore. So, and so I thought, okay, what could I do as a project? And I was like, you know what? I always wanted my own artist residency because I used to sit, when I used to do the residencies I got into, I would always sit, daydream, and fantasize about having my own, you know? And so, I don't know. So during the pandemic, with all the time on my hand, I was like, let me look into my credit. I want to buy a house and try to start this artist residency. And so I started, doing the work and, and thinking about what it would look like, applied to the art integration, got it. And so I'm in my 5th year of the fellowship, but I think my 3rd year of the art integration. And so I said, you know what, I'm gonna buy the house, I'm gonna paint it like my artwork, and I'm calling it the Queen Rose Art House, like the Queen Rose family. And then it'll be a social space for artists and an artist residency for out of town artists to come. And then I'll figure out, what to do with locals. And so now I have a fence mural project going on where they're going to be 30 fence murals.
All in the Kendall Whittier edition? Or?
In my yard. Yeah. Oh. So I can show you some, I can show you. Yes.
So those are so cool.
Yeah. So they actually doing these. So Tina was there yesterday. Yeah. So these like. Oh
wow.
So different. Yeah.
So all different artists.
Yeah. A mixture of people.
That's really cool. Yeah, so like the house and then the fence around the house.
Yeah. So the fence not on those pictures because it wasn't up. The fence was put up in November, so it looks different. It's slightly different from that now. And so I guess for the next First Friday, I'm gonna update this wall. I'm also gonna put one of my big portraits of Kay out just to switch up the room, just to switch up the wall, and then put some more images up there. But and so so I just started thinking like, what, because the art integration, you had to be doing something that was integrated into the community. It couldn't be like where you just had your studio, you just hung out in your studio and did First Friday. And so I always wanted an artist residency, but I also felt like if I was going to stay in Tulsa, that it couldn't be, whatever I did couldn't be insular. It couldn't be just like all Tulsa people, because I just feel like when things insular, they don't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. So and then also I was like, but I also didn't want to be here, like lose my connection to the other communities that I became a part of, like New York, Florida. And a lot of people from New York have moved to LA or whatnot. And so I just wanted to create something where I could bring people here and be a part of the community, and then have the local artists and the local community and a regional community show up and be a part of the space. And so, so I did that. And then I also, I don't know, like, again, like I was saying, like I was trying to figure out if I was going to stay here or not. But after the Tulsa massacre and all of that, like really learned that history. And I thought about the Groveland Four and the Ocoee massacre in Rosewood. And I was like, well, when my ancestors want me to stay and create something, and that was also what the spirit of coming to Oklahoma was all about way back then. Like you coming from, they had like the Trail of Tears, but people came here to kind of like start over or start a new chapter. And I was like, why shouldn't I do that? No, I wasn't born here. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like, if I'm getting the support for my projects, then I should stay and like work it out. And so it's the same thing with the house. I was like, it was only $51,000. It wasn't in my dream neighborhood, but the property was exactly what I needed to do my project. You know what I mean? So I was just like, some say, if you don't do it now, it's just not going to happen. You know what I mean? And so I moved forward with it. They even told me no, the nonprofit that I brought the house from, but the because my credit, it was almost there, but wasn't quite there. And then, my income more than what it says on paper, but like it's art income.
Yeah,
like
it's hard to claim that.
It's hard to claim. You can't, yeah. And so the only thing I could claim was the money from the fellowship. But somehow she had a conversation because her childhood friend was working with this nonprofit, and then she had a conversation. He said she went up to bat for me, the lender, and then it turned around. They sold me the house, but they just say like I can have the building for free as long as that like it was mine. I could do what I want. So that's why I brought the property. So I got the accelerator grant from the Kaiser Foundation and started renovating the property. And they also with the fence and to pay the artists. Each artist get $500, for their contribution. And hopefully each mural, in terms of updating the murals, I'll just play it by ear. But while I was going through all that during the pandemic, I don't know, what's the centennial during the pandemic, 2020?
The year after.
The year after. So because we were locked out of our studios, but
oh wow.
But I quickly decided I was going to do some paintings to pay tribute, and so I reached out to Bomb Magazine to say, could I, do a thing on the massacre? So I did these paintings, which they're all in boxes. But I was looking for the actual magazine, but actually the magazine doesn't have all the paintings. Doesn't have all the paintings in them. They kind of. So this is called Little Africa in Ruins, 2019. Then I wrote like an essay, and then this is called Dreamland, 1921. So this is like the Dreamland Theater sign. And because I also felt like so many of us were, like I didn't submit to like, some of this, like I submitted one thing but didn't get it, but like I didn't submit to like the banner thing because I thought like, well, gosh, we all were from the same images, and I was like, and I wasn't that confident in the paintings. It wasn't until I started doing exhibitions that people started responding to them. But I just thought like I didn't know if it was gonna fall flat, against everybody else because we was all given the same material, and it was like limited material. But so I thought I would do something for Bomb, but a lot of people responded.
Before you move forward, could you just talk through like this piece? Like specifically, I'm looking at like the gaping hole. So could you just talk through like your thought process?
So I was just thinking about basically the massacre and like the fires, you know what I mean? Like the stuff being burned to the ground. And so this is like the William Dreamland Theater. And so this is sort of like, the red fire going down. And this is just like some of the buildings in ruin, and so it's all kind of like collapsing. With this one, obviously this resembles Africa, the continent a little, and then it's it's just the buildings again, like this represents like the fire, and then just like the ruins, and so some of the buildings are like cracked, you know what I mean, like we're almost where it could be put, you know what I mean, put together. And then just like always like this figure like kind of being a witness to it. And then like these like use like stamps like history or like scrolls, you know what I mean? Like but it's almost like whatever's written, you kind of project your own onto it. Same with like the bird is a witness to what's going on. So this is called The Sunny Side of Black Wall Street. And the song Sunny Side of the Street. And so it's like the happier, like the happier times. But then this is like, I think when they're all standing there, like, you know what I mean? I think that's a picture of them all like standing there. Or they might be, this, I don't know if this is like, that might be all happy times, you know what I mean? I'll have to zoom in because there's some images where, people just stand around looking because something bad has happened. But I know this is actually the Dreamland Theater, I think. Yeah. And then I know this is like them on the street being like productive.
Mm-hmm.
So they might be being productive as well. They, but it's,
wow.
yeah. And then I think it's, this is Sunny Side of Black Wall Street, the sequel.
Okay.
So I think it's just all productivity, you know what I mean? But here is like, remember the period in the 60s, when it was just like abandoned buildings right here.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just where like, they're just there and like nothing's happening. And then it's when urban renewal like kind of comes in. And so that's kind of what this represents. And then you have like the people. But I think the sequel was kind of like these people standing here was kind of a reflection of like these people.
In that photo.
Yeah.
That makes sense, yeah.
And then, because most of the buildings have like the little white, so which is why that was dark. And so this one is, so this was in the show in Living Arts, and this is one of people responded well to. So it's called I'm Coming Up. So it's about, so like, of course, this character is like going up there and she's sitting to the top. So it's like, like I'm coming up. But then you have the Ku Klux Klan standing over a dead body. And then, it's like, this whole what's happening now. But it's also about like, we just trying to come up.
Right.
We just came just to come up. You know what I mean? And then like you doing this. And so, it's like, it's like we're being punished for being successful. And so this one is called Press On. So it's basically like the Ku Klux Klan emblem. And these are like all the black men like marching that was defending.
Yeah.
And so, and then of course, like they just being a witness to what's happening. And so then I invited other artists. So Lex Brown, her family is from here, but she doesn't live here. Who else did I invite? For Tody to do a writing. Sarah Ahmad submits. I think this was her project that was actually in. Joy Harjo, we got a poem from her. Crystal Z. Campbell, she was here. Her work was in this centennial.
Wow, he got some heavy hitters.
Yeah, Q contributor writing to it. Tina Henley, who's doing a mural now, had a contributor piece, invited her. Adam Kern, so he.
Oh, she's one of my favorite survivors.
Yeah, so he done these.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And and that was that project, and so
that was for what magazine again?
Bomb magazine. So it's Bomb. Yeah, right. This is one of the issues right here.
Oh,
but I can't. I'm sure that magazine is in here somewhere, but I'm just. But again, like they didn't have. They told me it was going to give every artist a page and didn't. And I didn't really. I just didn't feel like fighting with another person.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I do that so much sometimes that it's just like I don't need every relationship to be contentious.
Choose your battle.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, okay, they're gonna give us it online, like, and I didn't. I kind of hate I told the artist that, but it was like, I just didn't feel like, just doing it. But it's just like I just like I'll be careful next time. Because editors come in and just change stuff all the time, and for whatever reason, so.
Okay, so to wrap up, taking a lot of your time. To wrap up, like what? Okay, so you plan to stay in Tulsa, right? At least for the time being.
Yeah, that's the time. Yeah, that's the time being. So I'm working on proposals to get like some long-term funding for the Queen Rose Art House, like once the fellowship is done. But the plan is to continue like having two artists in residence each year. Like I want to do like a small video performance art festival like in the fall with that type of work. And I am working on a fashion line with this organization called Four Freedoms. I don't know if you ever heard of them. It's the artist Hank Willis Thomas. He started with a group of his friends or peers, which is also my peers as well. And so I'm working on that. Yeah, with the house, want to do like performances, continue to invite people to do performances and like get-togethers. At some point, when the fence murals, when enough are up, it's going to be open to the public on the weekends, like Saturdays and Sunday, where the public can just kind of walk through and see. And then we'll probably have like low key, events, during those hours sometimes. And then I'm working on a new project with James Franco that we're going to present in Athens, Greece. So I'm waiting to hear back from the gallerist and him on the schedule and the timeline. So once we hear back from the gallerist, we're going to start writing the script. And so the plan is for him to come to Tulsa and have the house, because I'm hoping the renovations are done. But if they're not all done, we'll shoot around some of it. But if we end up doing the script, or if we even do another script, because I always saw the house as being the backdrop and the set for some of my videos moving forward. So the idea is to have him come here and we shoot some stuff here. Then we plan to shoot some stuff in Europe. And then we discussed doing like a spoken word music album, like with spoken word and singing. And so we'll probably record that here too. Like I already written a couple of tracks, but I'm gonna wait until we start writing the script, before we finish writing songs. So the plan is for him to come here to shoot, record, and then we present the work in Athens, and then hopefully we'll be able to present some stuff in the States, depending on how it's received. But I really, I just want to push the Queen Rose Art House as far as I can get it, and as far as my own art practice and my artwork, I'm just kind of going where it takes me. Like I'm like 45 now. Like I had a lot of my career started. I think I got a New York Times review when I was 27.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So all of that stuff was happening in my late 20s and early 30s. And so I just feel like I should just go with the flow. Like I'm not into like pounding the pavement and being that intense about everything and having so many expectations, about things. So it's just like, I'm just make the work, do the projects that come up, push the Queen Rose Art House, keep that a social space, a space where I'm giving back to the community, and just keep it moving in that way. Because I believe if I just stay in alignment with what I really want to do and where I really want to be, then things will continue to open up for me, and I can continue to live in a freer space.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't know if we're all totally free, but you know what I mean. But I want to live, as free as I can be within the systems, I exist in.
Well, is there anything you'd like to add before we close out, or?
No, just thank you. Like, thank you for doing this. Like, again, like I was so excited because of my family history and like oral history that has been passed on, and sometimes how we can't document everything, but we try to document as much as we can. And I just love, because I just love when I go on YouTube and I see these. I remember in college, you would see these interviews with Alice Walker and Toni Morrison, you know what I mean? And Bell Hooks, you know what I mean? Just like they might be in a library somewhere, someone's just talking to them, you know what I mean? So I used to always love to discover those types of things. And so I'm really happy to be a part of it and that you invited me to be a part of it. So thank you.
Well, I just want to thank you for taking time out of this Monday to talk with me. So I just really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So we will end